The Shadow Riders thought they ruled the sword dueling circuits of Texas with steel and blood, their reputation built on broken spirits and shattered blades across 5 states. Their underground fighting rings had claimed countless lives and careers, turning proud duelists into hollow shells of their former selves. But on a moonlit night in the heart of hill country, they made a fatal mistake that would become whispered legend in dueling circles for generations. They mocked and challenged Thomas Blackwood's only son. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The leather-clad figures crowded around the young man at the Cedar Stone Saloon, their sneers visible in the dim lamplight. James Blackwood kept his eyes down, seemingly focused on his glass of whiskey, as the Shadow Riders circled like vultures. At 26, with his father's lean build and quiet demeanor, he looked nothing like the fighters they usually encountered in their illegal dueling rings. "Heard your daddy's ranch is struggling, boy." Marcus Kane, the riders' leader, leaned against the bar. His custom sword hilt gleamed at his hip, its surface marked with notches, one for each opponent he'd broken. "Shame about those cattle raids. Strange how problems keep happening to folks who won't sell to us." James took another slow sip, his hands steady despite the tension crackling through the air. The other patrons had gone quiet, watching the scene unfold while pretending not to stare. Everyone in hill country knew the Shadow Riders' reputation. How they used their fighting skills to intimidate, to control, to destroy anyone who stood in their way of building their criminal empire. Nothing to say. Kane's second-in-command, a scarred man they called the Serpent, circled behind James. "Maybe you're as weak as your old man. Heard he hasn't touched a sword since that accident 10 years ago. What was it again? Hand injury, wasn't it?" What they didn't know, what no one in Cedar Stone knew, was that James Blackwood had spent the last decade training in secret with the legendary Sixth Circle, the most elite sword masters in 3 continents. The same masters who had once counted his father among their ranks before the Shadow Riders had orchestrated his accident. While the world saw a quiet rancher's son, James had dedicated every dawn and dusk to becoming something else entirely, a weapon honed for a single purpose. "My father's health isn't your concern," James replied quietly, his voice carrying that particular tone that more observant men might have recognized. The calm of deep water, of a predator perfectly still before the strike. But the Shadow Riders had grown too confident, too secure in their power to notice such subtle warnings. Kane grabbed James's shoulder, spinning him around on the bar stool. "Everything in hill country is our concern, boy. Your daddy's ranch sits right where we need it, and one way or another." James's movement was subtle, just a slight shift of his arm as he steadied himself. But Kane's hand froze mid-gesture, his eyes widening slightly. Few would have noticed how James's sleeve had fallen back just enough to reveal the edge of a mark tattooed on his inner wrist. 6 interlocked circles, a symbol that had once made hardened duelists tremble. Kane's grip loosened, uncertainty flickering across his face before his arrogance reasserted itself. Well, well, looks like someone's been playing at being a real swordsman. Tell you what, boy, you want to save your daddy's ranch? Meet us at the Crossroads Arena tomorrow night. Show us what you can do." His smile turned cruel. "Who knows, maybe you'll last longer than the last few who tried to stand against us." As the Shadow Riders swaggered out of the saloon, leaving behind their customary wake of fearful whispers, James took another slow sip of his whiskey. In the corner, old Marcus, who had tended bar in Cedar Stone for 30 years, studied the young man with growing recognition. He'd seen that same controlled stillness before, in James's father, back when Thomas Blackwood had been known by another name in the dueling circles, The Ghost Blade, the man who had never lost a match until the night the Shadow Riders had arranged his accident. "Those marks on your wrist," old Marcus said quietly, after the other patrons had returned to their drinks. "The sixth circle. They're real, then? Not just stories?" James set down his glass, and for just a moment, the quiet rancher's facade fell away. His eyes held something ancient and deadly, the look of a master swordsman who had spent years preparing for one perfect moment of justice. "Everything's real, Marcus. The circle, the training, the oaths of steel and shadow. And tomorrow night, the Shadow Riders are going to learn why my father's real title wasn't the Ghost Blade." He stood, leaving payment on the bar. They called him the Teacher because every opponent he faced learned something. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I intend to honor that legacy." Through the saloon's windows, storm clouds gathered, over hill country, promising thunder to match the tension building in the air. The Shadow Riders had just challenged the wrong sun, and soon they would discover that some legacies run deeper than blood, some skills cut sharper than steel, and some mistakes can only be paid for in the ancient currency of the blade. Dawn painted the Texas hills in shades of gold as James Blackwood completed his morning routine, moving through ancient sword forms in the ranch's secluded back pasture. His blade whispered through the morning air, each movement precise, deliberate, flowing like water. To anyone watching, he might have appeared to be practicing simple exercises, the kind any amateur swordsman might attempt. But the depth of his control, the perfect economy of motion, spoke to years of relentless training. The Blackwood Ranch spread across 300 acres of prime hill country land, its strategic location along the old trade routes making it valuable to more than just cattle ranchers. James paused his practice as he caught the glint of chrome. Through the trees, the third time this week he'd spotted the same motorcycle making a slow pass along the property's border. Different riders, same Shadow Riders patch on their jackets. Inside the ranch house, Thomas Blackwood sat at the kitchen table, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug. His right hand bore the scars of his accident, evidence of the night the Shadow Riders had ensured one of the greatest swordsmen in Texas would never hold a blade again. Or so they thought. "They're getting bolder," Thomas said as James entered, not looking up from the local newspaper spread before him. "Fourth pass this morning." James poured himself coffee, his movements carrying the same measured precision. He showed with a blade. "Same pattern as yesterday. 2 riders plus a new one on a red Harley. Amateur. Keeps his sword hilt too high, compensating for poor balance." Thomas looked up, his eyes meeting his son's. A decade of shared secrets passed between them, years of hidden training, of preparing for the moment that now approached. "They're not just watching anymore, are they?" James sat across from his father, allowing himself a small smile that carried echoes of steel. "No, they're establishing patterns. Testing response times, studying routines, looking for weaknesses, just like you taught me they would." "We could sell," Thomas suggested, though his tone said he already knew the answer. "Their offer is well above market value." "It's not about the ranch." James's voice carried an edge he rarely allowed himself. "The Shadow Riders have bought or pressured their way into controlling every piece of land along the old trade routes. This is the last parcel they need." "For what?" "That's what I intend to find out." He studied his father's scarred hand. "Just like I intend to show them what happens when they mistake silence for weakness." Their conversation was interrupted by the rumble of motorcycles on the main road, not passing by this time, but turning onto their long gravel driveway. James moved to the window, his stance casual, but his mind calculating distances, angles, potential advantages. 3 bikes approached, led by a custom chopper ridden by Marcus Kane himself. "Stay inside," James told his father, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had earned him his place among the Sixth Circle's elite. "Whatever happens, whatever you hear, stay inside." He stepped onto the porch just as the bike stopped, in a V formation, gravel crunching under their wheels. Kane killed his engine, but remained mounted, removing his sunglasses with practiced theatricality. His two companions, younger men with patches marking them as the gang's enforcers, dismounted and flanked their leader. "Young Mr. Blackwood?" Kane called out, his voice carrying the false charm of a seasoned predator. "Beautiful morning for a ride." "This is private property, Mr. Kane." James's tone was pleasant, non-confrontational, just another rancher's son uncomfortable with unexpected visitors. Kane's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's exactly what I wanted to discuss, the property. My organization has plans for this region, plans that could benefit everyone." He gestured expansively, "Including you and your crippled father." James noted how Kane's enforcers subtly spread out, trying to flank him. Amateur move, they were telegraphing their intentions to anyone trained to see it. In their arrogance, they still saw him as nothing more than an obstacle to be intimidated or removed. "We're not interested in selling," James replied, maintaining his role. "This ranch has been in my family for generations. Things change, boy." Kane's charm slipped, revealing something colder. "Progress comes whether we want it or not. Smart folks adapt. Others," he shrugged, "they tend to find themselves facing unfortunate accidents, like your father did." The threat hung in the morning air, heavy as storm clouds. Inside the house, Thomas Blackwood's hand tightened on his coffee mug, the scars stretching white across his knuckles. But James had spent 10 years preparing for this moment, learning to channel emotion into perfect stillness. "Are you threatening us, Mr. Kane?" "Threatening?" Kane spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. "I'm offering you a way forward. 2 million, well above market value, because I respect what your family has built here." His voice hardened slightly. "But that offer won't last forever." James wrapped his arms around himself, a perfect picture of intimidated uncertainty. Inside, he was counting weapons, analyzing stances, noting how Kane's enforcers carried themselves. Everything confirmed his suspicions. These weren't just common thugs. Their quasi-military bearings suggested connections to something bigger. I'll need to discuss this with my father." "Of course." Kane's smile returned. He reached into his jacket, making one of his enforcers tense nervously. Another Tell James filed away. The man wasn't used to real violence, just intimidation. Kane produced a business card, holding it out. James stepped forward to take it, letting them see his slight tremor. 3 days, Mr. Blackwood." Kane mounted his bike. "Then we'll need an answer. And James?" His smile turned predatory. "Don't forget about our little appointment tonight. The Crossroads Arena. Let's see if you can uphold your father's legacy." The bikes roared away in a cloud of dust, leaving James on the porch. He waited until they were out of sight before his demeanor changed. The trembling stopped. His posture shifted subtly, weight balanced perfectly. This was the stance that had made him a legend among the Sixth Circle, the stance of a master preparing to hunt. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Crossroads Arena wasn't just another underground dueling venue, hidden beneath an abandoned cotton mill on the outskirts of Cedar Stone. It had witnessed countless battles over the years, some legal, most not. Tonight, the usual crowd of spectators had swelled to 3 times its normal size, word having spread about the upcoming match. The Shadow Riders had made sure everyone knew they were about to teach Thomas Blackwood's son a lesson. James arrived early, parking his weathered pickup truck a block away. He took his time preparing, each movement deliberate as he changed into traditional dueling attire. Simple black pants and a fitted grey shirt, clothes chosen for freedom of movement rather than flash. His sword, when he finally withdrew it from its custom case, appeared unremarkable. No decorative flourishes, no expensive materials, just well-maintained steel with a clean, practical design. Perfect for being underestimated. "Didn't expect you to actually show up," a voice called from the shadows. Sarah Chen, owner of the local martial arts supply shop, stepped into view. Her expression carried concern beneath its usual professional mask. "You know this is a trap, right?" "Of course it is." James checked his blade's edge with practiced precision. "Kane wants to make an example. Show everyone what happens when someone stands against the Shadow Riders." Sarah moved closer, lowering her voice. "This isn't just about the ranch, James. I've been hearing things. New players in the underground circuits, professional duelists disappearing, rumors about fixed matches and worse. The Shadow Riders are part of something bigger." "I know." James's voice remained calm, but his eyes held steel. "That's exactly why I'm here." Inside the arena, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. The space had been arranged in traditional style. A raised central platform surrounded by tiered seating, currently packed with both locals and faces James didn't recognize. Professional observers, he noted, likely scouts for other organizations, interested in the Shadow Riders' operations. Kane and his inner circle occupied a reserved section, holding court like medieval lords. Their confidence was obvious in their relaxed postures, their casual laughter. Why shouldn't they be confident? They'd arranged everything perfectly. If James proved skilled, they'd have leverage over his father. If he failed, it would reinforce their dominance. Either way, they won, or so they thought. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed through the space. "Tonight's special exhibition match, James Blackwood, representing the once great Blackwood legacy, against the Shadow Rider's own rising star, Victor the Viper Rodriguez." The crowd roared as Rodriguez entered the arena. He moved with the fluid grace of a trained killer, his custom sword gleaming under the lights. 6 feet of lean muscle and practiced arrogance, Rodriguez had built his reputation on ending matches. Quickly and brutally, his blade bore the same notches as Kane's, one for each opponent broken. James stepped onto the platform with deliberate calm. He could feel Kane watching, analyzing, looking for signs of weakness. The gang leader's smile widened as James took his starting position, his stance appearing slightly off balance, his grip on his sword a fraction too tight. More carefully crafted imperfections, more reasons to be underestimated. "Standard exhibition rules," the referee announced, though everyone knew the Shadow Riders played by their own code. "First blood or submission. Begin!" Rodriguez attacked. Immediately, his blade singing through the air in a complex pattern designed to overwhelm less experienced opponents. It was a display of both skill and arrogance, the kind of opening that had ended many matches before they truly began. James's response appeared desperate, almost clumsy. He retreated, his parries seeming more lucky than skilled. The crowd's reaction was predictable, some cheering Rodriguez's dominance, others looking away, expecting another quick and brutal demonstration of the Shadow Rider's power. Only a few observers noticed the subtle details, how James's supposedly awkward movements always put him exactly where he needed to be, how his amateur parries consistently forced Rodriguez to adjust his timing, how his apparent desperation was slowly but surely leading his opponent into a carefully crafted pattern. Sarah Chen, watching from the sidelines, recognized what was happening. She'd seen this technique before in old videos of Thomas Blackwood's matches. The Ghost Blade's signature style, appearing weak while systematically dismantling an opponent's strategy. The Shadow Riders had forced the father to stop fighting, but they'd never learned the full depth of his knowledge. Knowledge he'd spent 10 years passing to his son. Rodriguez's confidence grew with each exchange. His attacks became more flamboyant, more committed. To most observers, he appeared to be toying with his opponent, drawing out the inevitable conclusion for the crowd's entertainment. Even Kane was smiling now, clearly satisfied with how his demonstration was unfolding. Then James stumbled, a seemingly critical error that left his right side exposed. Rodriguez pounced, his blade driving forward in a killing strike. At the last possible moment, James's awkward stance shifted, his amateur grip transformed into something else entirely. And suddenly, Rodriguez found himself caught in a master's trap. The counter happened too fast for most observers to follow. James's blade seemed to flow like water, redirecting Rodriguez's attack while simultaneously launching its own response. There was a whisper of steel, a flash of movement, and suddenly the Shadow Rider's champion stood frozen, a thin line of blood appearing on his cheek. First blood. The arena fell silent. Rodriguez stood motionless, his confident expression replaced by something close to fear. He'd felt the precision in that counter, recognized the level of skill required to make such a strike. This was no amateur. Lucky strike. This was a master demonstrating exactly how much control he had over the situation. James maintained his slightly off-balance stance, his grip appearing to tremble slightly from exertion. But his eyes, when they met Kane's across the arena, held something that made the gang leader's smile fade. Recognition, perhaps, that the trap might not be exactly what he'd planned. Match to Blackwood, the referee announced into the stunned silence, by first blood. As James left the platform, he passed close to Kane's section, just close enough for the gang leader to hear his whispered words, "Consider that a warning for my father." The message was clear. The Shadow Riders had thought they were drawing a helpless son into their web. Instead, they'd given a hidden master the perfect opportunity to demonstrate just how badly they'd miscalculated. The real question was, what would they do about it? Cedar Stone hadn't changed much in the decade since Thomas Blackwood's accident had rocked the dueling world. The same family businesses still lined Main Street, though now most sported reinforced security gates and cameras, silent testimony to the Shadow Riders' growing influence. James parked his truck outside Chen's Traditional Arms, noting 3 motorcycles clustered near the entrance. Inside, he could hear raised voices. Sarah Chen's shop had been supplying legitimate martial artists and duelists for 3 generations. Now, it was about to become another kind of lesson. 2 Shadow Riders flanked the counter where Sarah stood, her face composed, but her hand near the ceremonial blade mounted behind the register. The 3rd rider, wearing a lieutenant's patch, leaned forward menacingly. "Protection fees ain't optional. Any more, Sarah," he growled. "Town's changing. Be a shame if something happened to all this fancy inventory." James selected a maintenance kit from a nearby shelf, moving quietly through the aisles. His presence registered. He saw the nearest. Ryder's hand twitched slightly toward his sword. Ex-military, that telltale gesture. More evidence, something bigger was happening with the Shadow Riders. "I've already paid the business association," Sarah's voice carried clearly. "Sheriff Martinez says Sheriff ain't in charge anymore." The lieutenant swept a display of traditional handguards onto the floor. "We are. 5,000 a month, starting today." James rounded the aisle, his maintenance kit in hand. He kept his movements deliberate, unthreatening, just another customer doing his shopping. "Oh my," he said mildly, stepping over scattered equipment. "What a mess. Sarah, do you have that special oil I ordered, the one from your contact in Japan?" The riders turned, irritation crossing their faces. The lieutenant started to speak, but James was already moving past them to the counter, pulling out his wallet. "Add these to my monthly account," he said cheerfully, "and I'll need to schedule some training time in your practice room. Father says my form needs work." Sarah blinked, then caught on. "Of course, James. I'll check the calendar in the back." "Take your time." James smiled at the riders. "I'm sure these gentlemen were just leaving, weren't they?" The lieutenant stepped closer, trying to use his bulk to intimidate. "This ain't your business, Blackwood. Not after last night." "No?" James's smile remained pleasant, but his eyes changed subtly. Later, the rider would try to explain to his brothers what he saw in those eyes. Something ancient, something that triggered instincts he'd learned in combat. "My grandfather helped build this town. Sarah's family gave me my first training sword, so maybe it is my business." He turned back to examining maintenance kits, dismissing them. The insult was deliberate, calculated. The lieutenant's face reddened, his hand twitching toward his sword hilt. "You got lucky once, boy. Luck runs out." James didn't look up. "Yes, it does. Like 2 weeks ago, when your new recruit had that nasty fall during private practice. The one that wasn't reported." Now he met the lieutenant's eyes. "Funny thing about accidents, you never know who might have seen something." The riders exchanged glances. That accident hadn't been reported because it had happened during a secret training session with their new corporate backers. No one was supposed to know about it. "We'll finish this later," the lieutenant told Sarah, trying to salvage some authority, but his voice had lost its edge. After they left, Sarah sagged against the counter. "You shouldn't have interfered, James, not after how you showed them up at Crossroads. They'll retaliate." "Yes, they will," James began, picking up the scattered equipment. "And they're getting more organized. That's what worries me." Sarah retrieved a broom from behind the counter. "Sheriff Martinez says they're just expanding their territory. Part of some big business deal." "Is that what he says?" James's voice was carefully neutral. "Interesting, because that's not what his deputy told Ellen Martinez when they tried to pressure her into selling the old dojo last month." He worked, in silence for a moment, letting Sarah process the implications. The shop owner was smart. She'd see the pattern. "They're buying up all the training facilities along the old martial arts circuit," Sarah said slowly, "or forcing people to sell. But why? It's just traditional training grounds." "Maybe." James finished organizing the display. "But it's also the most direct route between the border and the interstate. Lots of empty land, no surveillance coverage in some spots, perfect for moving things that need to stay off the main roads." Sarah's eyes widened. "You think they're—" "I think," James interrupted gently, "that you should take a vacation. Visit your sister in Houston, just for a week or two." "I can't. The shop." James's voice was soft but carried absolute authority. "Please. Things are about to change in Cedar Stone. When they do, it's better if certain people aren't around to see it." Outside, James loaded his supplies into the truck. His phone buzzed, a text from his father. "Sheriff Martinez stopped by after you left, asking questions about our plans for the ranch." James smiled. The pieces were moving exactly as he'd predicted. The Shadow Riders were getting nervous, pushing harder, which meant they had a deadline. Something big was coming. He drove to the outskirts of town, pulling onto a dusty turnout. From here, he could see the old trade route stretching south toward Mexico. 10 years ago, his father had been investigating rumors of black market weapons moving through traditional martial arts circles. The case had led to Texas before his accident had suddenly ended the investigation. His phone buzzed again. "Unknown. Number?" The text was brief. "They're watching you, getting nervous, like old times. M." James deleted the message. Master Chen, Sarah's uncle and one of his father's old allies, was still monitoring things. Good. He'd need backup when the time came. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hills as James headed home. In his rear-view mirror, he caught glimpses of a motorcycle following at a discreet distance. Amateur surveillance. They were watching him while he watched them. Perfect. Everything was falling into place. The ghost of his father's legacy was about to become something real, and the Shadow Riders were about to learn why the Blackwood name still haunted the darkest corners of the dueling world. But first, he had to give them exactly what they wanted. One seemingly vulnerable son, ready to be used as leverage against his father, the perfect target, the perfect trap. James smiled as he drove. Some predators, after all, hunt best from inside the den. Dr. Michael Rivera's private dojo sat on the edge of Cedar Stone, a modernized training facility built with old family money. As James pulled into the parking lot, he noted 3 new security cameras mounted high on the walls, professional-grade equipment with night vision capability. Not the kind of security a small-town martial arts instructor normally installed. He found Rivera in his office, reviewing student files on his laptop. The circles under the doctor's eyes spoke of sleepless nights. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, closing the laptop quickly. "Your monthly evaluation isn't until next week." "The cameras are new," James observed, settling into a chair. "Expecting trouble, Michael?" Rivera glanced at his office door before speaking softly. 3 Shadow Riders came in last night. Training injuries, they said, but the wounds... He ran a hand through his graying hair. "They weren't from practice matches, James. The cutting patterns, the depth of the wounds, these were professional strikes, calculated to disable without killing." James kept his expression neutral. "Training accidents, that's what Sheriff Martinez's report says?" "That's what they're calling it, but I saw the damage." Rivera leaned forward. "Something's changed in their organization, James. These weren't street thugs swinging swords. These were precision strikes from master-level duelists." Before James could respond, raised voices erupted from the waiting room. 2 of Kane's enforcers burst in, the same ones from Chen's shop. The larger one jabbed a finger at Rivera. "Those files you were looking at. Hand them over. Now." James remained seated, seemingly forgotten in the corner. He watched Rivera stand, noting how the doctor's hand moved toward his desk drawer. Former military medic turned martial arts instructor. He'd have a weapon within reach. "Patient. Files are confidential," Rivera said firmly. "You know that." The second enforcer drew his sword. Amateur move, threatening instead of acting. James catalogued his weaknesses automatically. Weight too far forward, grip too tight, eyes focusing on his target instead of scanning for other threats. "Confidential doesn't apply anymore, Doc. Boss wants those files and what exactly does your boss want with private medical records?" James's voice cut through the tension. He hadn't moved from his chair, but something in his tone made both enforcers turn. "Stay out of this, Blackwood. This ain't your business." "No." James smiled slightly. "Tell me, did Kane send you for all of Dr. Rivera's files, or just the ones about last night's training accidents?" The enforcers exchanged glances. The larger one stepped toward him. "You need to leave. Now." "Actually," James rose smoothly, his movement making both men instinctively step back. "I think you need to deliver a message to Kane. Tell him if he wants to clean up his messes, he should teach his men better blade control. 3 wounded in one night. That's sloppy." The armed enforcer raised his sword. "How did you—" "The same way I know about the shipment coming in tonight." James's voice turned cold. "The same way I know why you're really buying up property along the old trade routes. The same way I know about your deal with the corrupt border agents." Both men went pale. That information was compartmentalized. Nobody outside Kane's inner circle should know about it. "Who are you?" the larger one demanded. "Just a rancher's son." James moved toward the door, his stride casual, but his path taking him inside their reaction zones. "For now, But you tell Kane something's changed in his operation. Someone's watching, someone who knows how to look. He paused at the door. Oh, and boys, next time you draw steel in a doctor's office. He nodded toward Rivera's desk. Check if your target is the only one armed. After he left, the enforcers found Rivera calmly holding a traditional tanto blade under his desk. They left without the files. James drove home along the old trade route, his mind processing the encounter. The enforcers' reactions confirmed his suspicions. The Shadow Riders were running professional operations, using the dojos and training facilities to cover their tracks. But the operation was bigger than just illegal dueling. The land purchases, the border agent connections, the master-level duelists, it all pointed to something larger. His phone buzzed. Another text from Master Chen. Satellite shows increased activity at abandoned Thompson dojo, matches pattern from Osaka case. James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The Osaka case, his father's last investigation before being forced to retire. An international weapons ring using traditional martial arts schools as cover. The investigation had led to Texas, before someone high up had shut it down. Now the same patterns were emerging at home. He found Thomas on the porch, watching the sunset. They followed you from town, his father said quietly. 2 bikes keeping their distance. They're getting bolder. Thomas studied his son's face. You're going to let them take their shot at you, aren't you? It's the fastest way inside. James touched his father's scarred hand gently. Kane's organization is moving something big, something worth killing for, but they're sloppy, overconfident, just like in Osaka. That case almost got me killed. No, James's eyes hardened. That case got shut down because we got too close to someone powerful, someone who didn't want their connection to international. Weapons trafficking exposed. Now the same operation has surfaced here. He pulled out his phone, showing Thomas the text from Chen. The Thompson dojo, that's where they'll make their move. Perfect sightlines, multiple escape routes, easy access to the trade route. And if you're wrong? James smiled. The expression would have sent chills down the spines of those who remembered his father's dueling days. It was the smile that had made hardened fighters forfeit rather than face the Ghostblade's son in combat. I'm not wrong. By this time tomorrow, the Shadow Riders will make their move. They'll try to use me as leverage to force you to sell the ranch. His voice carried absolute certainty. And that's when the real hunt begins. That's when we finish what started in Osaka. As darkness fell over Cedar Stone, the Crossroads Arena came alive again. But tonight was different. The usual crowd of local spectators had been replaced by harder faces, professional duelists and fighters from across 3 states. James watched from the shadows as they filed in, noting the military precision in their movements. These weren't the usual underground circuit fighters. These were trained killers. Private exhibition tonight, Sarah Chen's voice came from behind him. She'd switched her usual business attire for traditional training gear, a subtle indication she expected trouble. Kane's brought in specialists, top-tier fighters from Houston, Dallas, even as far as New Orleans. James adjusted the wrapping on his sword grip, each movement precise. How many? At least 12 that I recognize. All master level or close to it. Sarah's voice dropped lower. James, these aren't just duelists. I'm seeing faces from the international circuits. People who disappeared from professional competition years ago. Mercenaries now, James confirmed, using their skills for a different kind of employer. The arena floor had been reconfigured, the usual single platform replaced by 3 separate dueling rings. In the center, Kane held court with a new group of associates, men in expensive suits who carried themselves with the same lethal grace as the professional fighters. Ladies and gentlemen, Kane's voice carried across the space, tonight's exhibition is special, a private demonstration, of talent and opportunity. His eyes found James in the shadows. Young Mr. Blackwood has shown promise. Now let's see how he handles real competition. The first opponent stepped into the central ring, a tall woman with close-cropped hair and a distinctive scar along her jawline. James recognized her from old competition footage. Marina Kovac, former European champion who'd vanished from the circuit 3 years ago after a controversial final match. "Standard rules suspended," Kane announced. "Tonight we fight full contact, victory by submission or..." His smile turned predatory. "Incapacitation." James moved to the ring with deliberate calm, maintaining his carefully crafted appearance of barely concealed nervousness. But his mind was cataloguing every detail. The positions of Kane's new associates, the way they studied him with professional assessment, the subtle hand signals passing between the gathered fighters. "Begin!" Kovac attacked with brutal efficiency, her blade work reflecting years of both competition and darker experience. There was no showmanship here, no playing to the crowd, just precise, lethal intent. Her first combination would have crippled a lesser opponent. James's defense appeared desperate, his footwork slightly off balance. To most observers, he looked like a talented amateur barely surviving against a master. But Sarah, watching intently, saw what was really happening, how each seemingly awkward movement revealed something about Kovac's style, how each close call taught him more about her patterns. The bout lasted 3 minutes. Kovac, frustrated by her inability to land a decisive strike, committed fully to a killing blow. James's clumsy defense suddenly transformed. His blade seemed to flow like water, redirecting her attack while simultaneously executing a complex, disarming technique that sent her sword spinning away. The follow-up strike stopped a hair's breadth from her throat. "Yield," he said softly. The silence in the arena was absolute. Kovac's eyes had widened in recognition. That disarming technique was unique, a signature move of the Ghost Blade, Thomas Blackwood's most famous innovation. Kane's voice cut through the tension. "Impressive, but the night is young. Who's next?" They came one after another. Each fighter brought their own style, their own lethal expertise. A former military instructor specializing in quick kills, an underground circuit champion known for crippling opponents, a quiet man who'd once been China's Olympic hope before turning to darker pursuits. James met each one with the same strategy, appearing to barely survive while systematically analyzing their techniques. Each bout ended the same way. A moment of transformation, a flash of true skill, and another defeated master. "Enough games!" One of Kane's suited associates stepped forward. His accent was subtle, possibly Eastern European. "The boy has skill. Time to test him properly." He nodded to a corner where a figure had remained motionless throughout the matches. The man who stepped into the ring moved like flowing darkness. His sword wasn't the traditional dueling blade, but a modified tactical weapon. Everything about him spoke of professional killing. "Allow me to introduce Mr. Gray." Kane's smile had turned cold, a specialist in solving complex problems. The fight that followed was unlike anything the arena had ever witnessed. Gray attacked with mechanical precision, each strike calculated to disable or kill. There was no wasted movement, no flourish, just pure, lethal intent. James's usual strategy of appearing weaker wouldn't work here. Gray was too dangerous, too skilled to risk playing with. For the first time that night, the audience saw glimpses of what really lurked behind James's careful facade. Their blades met in a dance of lethal geometry. Each combination was answered and countered at speeds that made the air sing. Gray's expression remained impassive, but his attacks grew increasingly committed as he realized he faced someone who matched him technique for technique. The end came. Suddenly, Gray launched a complex series of strikes designed to overwhelm any defense. James met the attack with something that made the professional killer's eyes widen, the Ghost Blade's infamous flowing water technique, but modified, evolved into something new and deadly. Gray's sword clattered to the ground. He stood frozen, a thin line of blood appearing on his chest, where James's blade had traced a perfect warning stroke. "Impressive indeed," the European associate spoke into the stunned silence. "It seems the Ghost Blade taught his son more than just basics." James maintained his guard position, blade unwavering. "Interesting that you know that name. My father's dueling career ended 10 years ago." "Did it?" Kane's smile had gained a dangerous edge. "Or did he just go underground? Like so many other skilled practitioners who saw the advantage of using their talents more profitably." The implication was clear. The Shadow Riders weren't just criminals using martial arts as cover. They were part of something bigger, an organization that recruited master-level fighters for darker purposes. "A shame about your father's accident," the European continued, "but perhaps we can offer you a different path. Your skills could be very valuable to certain interested parties." James lowered his blade slowly, letting them see uncertainty in his expression. Inside, he was calculating angles, positions, escape routes. Everything confirmed his suspicions. This wasn't just about the ranch or local control. The Shadow Riders were recruiting for something bigger, something international in scope. "I'll need time to consider." "Of course." Kane's voice carried false warmth. "Take all the time you need. Just remember, opportunities like this don't come along often. And sometimes," his eyes hardened, "refusing them can have unfortunate consequences for everyone we care about." As James left the arena, he caught snippets of conversation between Kane and his associates. Words like shipment and border and schedule that confirmed everything he and his father had suspected. The Shadow Riders were about to move something big, something worth killing for, and they'd just given James exactly the opening he needed to expose it all. The real game was about to begin. Night settled over the Blackwood ranch like a velvet shroud. James sat in darkness, watching his security feeds, carefully hidden cameras he'd positioned around the property over the years. The screens showed 5 Shadow Riders taking positions in the tree line, their movement patterns confirming his earlier analysis. These weren't ordinary gang members. They moved with military precision, using standard tactical approaches. His phone buzzed silently. Master Chen's message was brief. "Facial recognition confirms 3 of Kane's new associates from Crossroads. Arena, former Special Forces, same unit that disappeared after Osaka incident." James smiled in the darkness. The pieces were falling into place. The same unit that had been providing security for the weapons shipments his father had been investigating before his accident. Now they were here, working with the Shadow Riders. "They're here," he said softly. Thomas's voice came from the darkness behind him. "Last chance to do this differently." "No!" James checked his hidden blade, running his fingers along the edge with practiced precision. "They need to think they have control, need to get inside their operation." He touched his father's shoulder briefly. "Remember the signal. If I don't send it every 6 hours, I contact Chen. I remember." Thomas's voice was tight with concern. "Just come back to me. Always." The first attack came exactly as James had predicted. A flashbang through the front window followed by a coordinated breach from a professional tactical team. In another life, he would have admired their technique. 2-man teams, synchronized movement, perfect timing. James let them find him in the kitchen, appearing appropriately terrified. The team leader, face hidden behind a tactical mask, secured his hands with practiced efficiency. "Target acquired," he reported into his radio. "No complications." They moved him quickly to the waiting vehicles. Through his carefully crafted mask of fear, James noted every detail. 6-man team, latest-gen tactical gear, military hand signals. This was no ordinary gang operation. Kane waited by the vehicles, watching with satisfaction. "Mr. Blackwood, sorry about the dramatic entrance, but we needed to make a point. What do you want?" James let his voice tremble. "Same thing as before, the ranch, but now your father has extra motivation to sell." Kane's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You'll be our guest until the paperwork is signed." Well, the drive to the Thompson dojo took exactly 12 minutes. James counted every turn, noted every radio call. The tactical team maintained strict communications discipline, another sign they weren't typical criminals. Inside the dojo, the setup confirmed his analysis. Professional guard positions, modern surveillance equipment, secure communications center. This wasn't just a temporary holding site, this was an operations base. They secured him to a chair in the central office, giving him clear view of their activities. Overconfidence. They wanted him to see their strength, their professionalism, to feel helpless. Kane pulled up a chair. "Don't worry, this won't take long. Your father's already received our demands. Once he signs the transfer papers, you'll be free to go." James maintained his frightened demeanor while observing everything. Through the office windows, he could see teams unloading crates from a newly arrived truck. Military shipping containers, serial numbers matching the pattern from Osaka. "Why?" he asked, letting tears fill his eyes. "Why our ranch? There's nothing special about that land." "Actually, there is." Kane leaned back, enjoying his moment of superiority. "The old trade route is about to become very important. Certain business opportunities are opening up. Your ranch is the final piece we need." A commotion at the loading dock drew his attention. One of the tactical team members approached rapidly. "Sir, we've got a problem. The shipment manifests don't match. Someone's been tampering with the routing codes." Kane's casual demeanor vanished. "Show me." Victoria watched them examine documents at a nearby desk. The team member pointed to something on a laptop screen. "These serial numbers. They're being tracked. Someone's monitoring the shipments." "Impossible." Kane's voice carried real concern now. "Those codes are classified military eyes only. Not anymore." The team member lowered his voice, but James's trained hearing caught every word. "Boss, this matches what happened in Osaka. Remember when that investigator almost exposed the whole operation?" James kept his expression fearful, but inside he smiled. They'd taken him exactly where he needed to be, at the heart of their operation. His phone, hidden in a concealed pocket, vibrated once. Master Chen's acknowledgement. The tracking devices he'd attached to their vehicles during the kidnapping were transmitting. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Kane returned, his earlier confidence replaced by barely concealed worry. "Change of plans. We accelerate the timeline, get the buyer on secure comms. The whole shipment moves tonight." "Sir," one of his men objected, "the border crossing isn't secured yet." "Now!" Kane ran a hand through his hair. "Something's wrong. This is too similar to Osaka. We need to finish this before—" He stopped, staring at James with dawning suspicion. For just a moment, James let his mask slip, let Kane see what was really behind his tears. The gang leader took an involuntary step back. "Who are you?" Kane whispered. James smiled, and for the first time that night it reached his eyes, the same smile that had haunted fighters' nightmares for generations. "You should have checked more carefully," he said softly. "Should have looked deeper into who you were dealing with. But then the weapons traffickers in Osaka made the same mistake." Kane's face went pale. "The Ghost Blade's son. You're not just his student. Consider this a friendly warning," James continued, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had once made cartel leaders confess. "Release me now, leave Texas, and this ends here." Continue with tonight's shipment." He shrugged against his restraints. "Well, you know what happened in Osaka." Kane's response was predictable. "Secure him, double the guard. No one goes in or out without my direct approval." He leaned close to James. "Ghostblade's son or not, you're not stopping this shipment. Too much money involved, too many powerful people." "I know," James replied calmly. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." As they left him alone in the office, James began counting down in his head. 3 hours until Chen's team would be in position. 2 hours until the weapons buyers arrived. Just enough time for a ghost's son to prepare for hunting. The real game was about to begin. The Thompson dojo hummed with tense activity as James observed from his secured position. Through the office windows, he watched Kane's operation with professional interest. 3 shifts of guards rotating every 4 hours, communication center monitoring police bands, tactical teams maintaining. Perimeter security, professional but not flawless. A younger guard approached, holding a water bottle. His patch identified him as a recruit, Daniel, according to the name tape on his tactical gear. Former military based on his bearing, but his eyes showed uncertainty. "Thank you, Daniel." James's use of his name made him start slightly. "Army. Rangers, right? Afghanistan?" His expression confirmed James's analysis. "How did you—" "The way you move, that distinct Rangers scanning pattern." He took a sip of water. "Tell me, what did they tell you about tonight's shipment?" "I'm not supposed to talk to you." But he lingered, curious despite himself. "Of course not," James's voice carried, just enough edge to make him nervous. "The Ghostblade's son is dangerous, even tied to a chair." He paused, letting the title sink in. "But you're already having doubts, aren't you? Wondering why a simple land grab needs military-grade tactical teams? Why those crates have weapons-grade markings?" Daniel glanced involuntarily at the loading dock where teams were preparing the shipment. James noted the reaction. Those weren't just regular weapons they were moving. "Those aren't just weapons, are they?" he continued softly. "You figured that out, haven't you? Regular guns don't need specialized handling protocols, don't need military security teams." "Shut up." But his voice lacked conviction. "Did Kane tell you about Osaka? About what happened to the last team that helped move cargo like this?" A door slammed open as Kane entered, his face tight with controlled anger. "Stop talking to the prisoner." He dismissed Daniel with a gesture, then turned to James. "Trying to turn my men already? You haven't lost your father's touch." "Just making conversation," James smiled pleasantly. "Reminiscing about old times. Remember Captain Wei from Osaka? The one who helped us expose the operation? He got full immunity." Kane's facade cracked slightly. "You're not getting out of this. Even if you are the Ghostblade's son, you're alone. No backup, no tactical. Team." "Am I?" James shifted slightly, making Kane tense. "Are you sure about that?" Before he could respond, one of his communications specialists burst in. "Boss, we've got movement, multiple vehicles approaching from the north." "Buyers are early?" Not the buyers." The specialist's voice carried real concern. "Different approach pattern, professional. They're maintaining radio silence." James watched Kane's expression shift. "Expecting someone else?" he asked innocently. Kane's phone buzzed. The color drained from his face as he read the message. "How? This is impossible. Those are classified frequencies." "Are they?" James kept his voice casual. "You should ask your weapons buyers about their operational security, particularly their communications protocols. Sloppy work using the same frequencies as Osaka." Kane grabbed James's chair, leaning close. "What did you do?" "Me? I'm just a hostage." But his smile suggested otherwise. "Although you might want to check your vehicles for tracking devices. Standard procedure during a kidnapping. Plant trackers during the initial encounter." Your tactical team was so focused on looking professional, they forgot basic counter-surveillance. A new commotion erupted outside. Another of Kane's team leaders rushed in. "Sir, we've got a problem. Local police scanner just lit up. Multiple federal agencies coordinating with state police. They're establishing roadblocks on all approaches to the trade route." "Shut it down," Kane ordered. "Scrub everything. Tell the buyers." "Too late." James's voice cut through his growing panic. "Those roadblocks aren't random. They're boxing you in, using your own tactical approach against you. Standard Ghost protocol. Trap them in their own fortress." Kane's phone buzzed again. The message made him curse. "The buyers are backing out. Say there's too much heat." "Of course they are." James settled more comfortably in his chair. "Professional weapons buyers don't like complications. One hint of federal attention, they disappear, taking their money with them." Through the windows, he could see the operation unraveling. Guards abandoning positions, tactical teams arguing about evacuation protocols, the professional facade cracking under pressure. "You planned this," Kane accused. "The kidnapping, the tracking device, the buyers getting spooked. You wanted to be caught." Partly true. James met his gaze calmly. "I needed to confirm the connection to Osaka, needed to identify the real players above you, Kane, the ones who shut down my father's investigation 10 years ago." A new voice crackled over the dojo's speakers, Master Chen's distinctive tone. "Attention, Shadow Riders. This is a federal operation. We have you surrounded. All exits are covered. Surrender now." James watched the last of Kane's confidence crumble. "You know what happens next, don't you? Your buyers are gone. Your tactical teams are ready to run, and everyone up the chain is already destroying evidence, erasing connections." "You're bluffing," Kane snarled. "This is just you and Chen trying to—" Another specialist rushed in. "Boss, we've got satellite coverage, military grade. Someone's painting the building with targeting data." James smiled. "Still think I'm bluffing? Your buyers weren't just afraid of federal attention. They were afraid of me. Afraid of what the Ghostblade's son might have uncovered about their operation, about their connections to Osaka." Around them, the dojo erupted in chaos as Shadow Riders members realized the trap they were in. Some wanted to fight. Others were already looking for escape routes. The professional tactical team stood apart, communicating urgently on their secured channels. "One last chance, Kane." James's voice carried absolute certainty. "Surrender now. Tell us everything about the buyers, about the weapons shipments, about Osaka, or," he shrugged, "well, you remember what happened to the last organization that underestimated my father's legacy." Kane stared at him for a long moment, weighing options that were rapidly disappearing. Outside, federal vehicles could be seen taking position. The net was closing. The Ghostblade's son was hunting again, and this time he had them exactly where he wanted them. The Thompson dojo had become a pressure cooker as James watched Kane's organization fracture under mounting tension. The professional tactical teams had separated themselves from the regular Shadow Riders members, their military training obvious as they established defensive positions. "Sir?" Daniel, the young recruit, approached Kane nervously. "The weapons-grade sensors, they're showing readings from those crates. What exactly are we moving here?" "Shut up and maintain your position," Kane snapped, but James caught the fear beneath his anger. The operation was unraveling faster than he could control. "Tell him, Kane," James suggested calmly from his chair. "Tell him about the specialized weapons components, the ones that need those reinforced containers. The ones your buyers are willing to pay millions for." "I said shut up!" Kane drew his sword, but his hand shook slightly. The tactical team leader stepped forward. "Boss, we need to make a decision. Local police scanners show federal tactical units moving into position. At least 3 different agencies." "They're following Ghost Protocol," James explained helpfully. "Multiple agencies, synchronized approach. The same technique my father used in Osaka." He smiled at Kane. Remember how that ended? Half the organization tried to surrender, hoping for deals. The other half, well, hospitals in 3 states got very busy. Daniel moved closer to James, his voice low. What happened in Osaka? Don't answer. Kane started, but James's voice cut through his command. International weapons trafficking. Military-grade components being sold to foreign buyers. Sound familiar? He watched Daniel's face as realization dawned. Just like now. Same buyers, same protocols, even the same weapons-grade markings on the crates. The tactical team leader cursed softly. Those aren't just weapons parts in those containers, are they? We're moving something bigger. The dojo erupted in angry shouts as more Shadow Riders members overheard. Regular gang members, signed up for underground dueling and local control, not international weapons trafficking. James watched the chaos spread with professional satisfaction. You're enjoying this, Kane accused, his face pale with rage. Immensely! James shifted in his chair, making his guards tense. Watch your men, Kane. See how they're dividing. Military-trained personnel by the exits, regular members clustering together. They're choosing sides, just like Osaka. An explosion rocked the perimeter as federal forces detonated their first breach charge. Not penetrating yet, just demonstrating their position. Classic Ghost protocol, psychological pressure before physical assault. Boss, a communication specialist called from his station. We're being jammed. All frequencies going dark. Tell me, Kane, James's voice carried through the growing chaos, did your buyers mention what happens to failed operators, the ones who lose shipments? Because I remember files full of accidents and disappearances. More explosions outside. Master Chen's voice boomed through professional-grade speakers. Attention all personnel, we have satellite confirmation of specialized weapons in transit. This is now a federal containment operation. Surrender immediately, or we will use lethal force. The effect was immediate. Regular Shadow Riders members began throwing down their weapons. The professional tactical teams established a defensive perimeter, but James could see the uncertainty in their movements. Military-grade weapons, Daniel whispered, horrified. We've been moving military-grade weapons. Not your fault, James told him quietly. They pick ex-military carefully. Men who follow orders don't ask questions until it's too late. Kane's phone buzzed. His face went ash-white as he read the message. No, they can't. They promised. Let me guess, James said pleasantly. Your buyers just officially disavowed all connection to this operation? Standard protocol when a shipment is compromised. Right now they're erasing records, eliminating links. Soon they'll start eliminating witnesses. The tactical team leader grabbed Kane's arm. Is he right? Are they going to burn us? Nobody's burning anybody. Kane shoved him away. We stick to protocol. Destroy the evidence, eliminate witnesses, break contact. His eyes fixed on James, including him. Including the Ghostblade's son? James smiled. You really want to add killing me to weapons trafficking charges? Former Ghostblade, Kane corrected, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, James's smile widened. My reinstatement paperwork was filed this morning. Master Chen's orders. Full federal authority. He met Kane's eyes. Want to add killing a federal agent to your charges? Another explosion, closer now. Through the windows, James could see federal tactical teams moving into position. The dojo had become a trap, just as he'd planned. Options, boss? The tactical team leader's voice carried military precision, but also fear. We're running out of time. James watched Kane wrestle with his diminishing choices. Outside, more Shadow Riders members were surrendering. The professional teams were separating into smaller groups, some clearly planning to fight, while others prepared to run. 10 years, James said softly. 10 years I waited for this operation to resurface. for the real players to show themselves. And you led me right to them. Kane's phone buzzed again. This time reading the message made him stumble backwards, true terror crossing his face. "They're here," he whispered. James's smile widened. "The buyers. Good. I was hoping they'd come personally." He shifted again, making the chair creak. After all, a ghost can't hunt what it can't see, until now. 3 black SUVs approached the dojo's rear entrance, their diplomatic plates catching the security lights. James counted 12 men emerging, private military contractors based on their movement patterns. Their leader wore an expensive suit that didn't quite hide his tactical vest. Marcus Drake. James recognized him from his father's old case files. "Kane," James said softly, "you have no idea what you've just brought to my doorstep." The real hunt was about to begin. Marcus Drake entered with the confident stride of someone used to owning every room, his security team spreading out with professional efficiency. James studied him through half-lowered eyes, noting every detail. This was the man who'd ordered the Osaka operation shut down, who'd called in favors to have his father's investigation buried. "Mr. Kane," Drake's cultured voice carried clear authority, "you assured me this facility was secure." "It is," Kane started, but Drake cut him off. "Really? Then explain the federal tactical teams outside. Explain how our secure frequencies were compromised." His eyes found James. "Explain why you're holding the Ghostblade's son in your office." "Former Ghostblade," Kane corrected automatically. "No." Drake moved closer, studying James. "This is the heir to the legacy, the one who almost exposed our Osaka operation." A thin smile crossed his face. "I wondered if you'd surface again." "Couldn't resist," James replied calmly. "Same sloppy protocols, same weapons-grade signatures on the shipments. You never learn, Marcus." Daniel, the young recruit, shifted nervously. "Weapons-grade? Boss, you said this was just regular smuggling." "Shut up!" Kane's control was cracking. "Everyone just shut up and maintain position." But James could see the dojo's dynamics shifting. Drake's security team was isolating the weapons crates, while Shadow Riders members began backing away, realizing the true scale of what they'd been involved in. "Your men weren't informed?" Drake raised an eyebrow at Kane. "Sloppy operational security, just like Osaka." He turned to his security chief. "Prepare for cleanup protocol Alpha." James recognized the code phrase from his father's old case files, the same words that had preceded 3 accidents after Osaka. The effect on the tactical teams was immediate. They recognized a cleanup order when they heard one. Several moved toward the exits, while others raised weapons, creating a 3-way standoff between Drake's men, the Shadow Riders, and the professional contractors. Another explosion rocked the perimeter. Master Chen's voice boomed again. "This is your final warning. We have tactical teams in position. Surrender now, or we breach with lethal force." "Your operation is compromised," Drake told Kane coldly. "Your men are unreliable. Time for professionals to handle this." "Like hell," the tactical team leader stepped forward. "We're not going down for this. Not getting cleaned up like those guys in Osaka." James watched the tension rise, counting angles and distances. In the growing chaos, no one noticed him working at his restraints. The zip ties Kane's men had used were professional grade, but they'd missed the ceramic blade hidden in his belt. "Amateur mistake. The Ghost Blade's legacy isn't the only one that kept records," he announced casually. "Master Chen has copies of everything. Osaka, the diplomatic cover, the weapons-grade shipments, one phone call, and it all goes public." Drake's composed facade cracked slightly. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" James smiled. "Check your secure channels. Notice anything missing? Like the routing codes for your shipments, the ones being uploaded to federal servers right now." Kane grabbed Drake's arm. "You promised us protection, said we'd have immunity." Drake's security chief moved with professional efficiency. The suppressed shot dropped Kane before he could finish speaking. The dojo erupted in gunfire as the three factions turned on each other. James used the chaos to make his move. The ceramic blade sliced through his restraints as Daniel dove for cover behind his chair. "Choose now, Daniel," he said calmly, even as bullets whizzed past. "Help me secure those weapons crates. You get immunity. Try to run," he shrugged. "Well, you've seen how Drake handles loose ends." Outside, federal tactical teams began their breach. The dojo had become a war zone of competing interests. Drake's professionals trying to secure the shipment, shadow riders fighting for survival, and tactical contractors looking for escape. But they'd all forgotten the most important thing about hunting ghosts. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one you think you have trapped. James moved through the chaos like a shadow, Daniel covering his flank. The weapons crates were his priority, keeping them out of Drake's hands while federal teams breached, just like Osaka. But this time, he had what he needed: proof of the international conspiracy, proof of Drake's involvement, and witnesses ready to talk. "The crates," he said during a brief pause in the shooting. "Where exactly?" "Storage room." "3," Daniel replied, checking his ammunition. "Lead-lined containers, weapons-grade markings. But Drake's men are between us and—" A burst of gunfire interrupted him as Drake's security team spotted them. James pulled Daniel behind a concrete pillar, analyzing angles and positions. 3 professionals with tactical gear and suppressed weapons, former special forces based on their movement patterns. "Remember your ranger training," he said calmly. "What's the counter for a 3-man wedge formation?" Daniel blinked, then understood. As Drake's men advanced, he and James split up, using crossing lines of fire to break their coordinated approach. The Ghost Blade's reputation hadn't been exaggerated. James dropped 2 operators with precise strikes, disabling without killing, while Daniel forced the 3rd to retreat. "Nice work," James acknowledged as they moved forward. Through the dojo's speakers, Master Chen announced the federal breach was beginning, multiple explosion points creating chaos and confusion. Drake's commanding voice cut through the gunfire. "Secure those containers. Nothing else matters." "He's desperate," James observed, leading Daniel through a service corridor. "The weapons-grade components are just his cover story. There's something else in those containers. Something worth killing for." They reached Storage Room 3. Below, Drake's men were preparing to move the specialized containers while remnants of the Shadow Riders engaged in a running battle with the tactical contractors. James's phone vibrated. A text from Chen. "Sensors confirm unique signature from containers. Not matching weapons-grade profile." "Daniel," he said quietly, "what color were the warning symbols on those containers?" "Red and black, standard weapons-grade markings." "Exactly." James smiled grimly. "But weapons-grade markings are orange and yellow. Drake's been playing everyone. Even his own buyers think they're getting military hardware, but he's shipping something else, something worth creating an elaborate cover story." A new explosion rocked the dojo as federal tactical teams made their first entry. Drake's security forces responded with professional precision, while the remaining Shadow Riders scattered. "Boss," one of Drake's operators called out, "federal breach teams on 3 sides. We're running out of time." "Get those containers loaded," Drake ordered. "Use Protocol 7 if you have to." James's expression hardened. "Protocol 7, just like Osaka." "What's Protocol 7? Daniel asked, ducking as bullets sparked off the railing. "Thermite charges. Destroy everything, rather than let it be captured. That's how they buried the evidence last time. Burned it all." James's voice turned cold, "including their own men." Below, Drake's operators began planting charges while continuing to hold off federal teams. The dojo had become a complex battlefield, federal agents breaching from multiple points, Shadow Riders fighting for survival, tactical contractors looking for escape routes, and Drake's professionals trying to protect their cargo. "Time to end this," James said quietly. "Daniel, I need you to create a distraction. Get their attention focused upward while I—" Movement caught his eye. One of Drake's men was opening a container, preparing to plant charges. For just a moment, James saw inside. Not weapons-grade components at all, but something that made him curse softly. "Those containers," he said, "they're full of data drives, quantum storage devices." Understanding dawned on Daniel's face. Information. They're moving information. Not just any information. James's voice was grim. "Those are military-grade encryption units, the kind used for storing black operations data. Covert assets, mission details, operative identities." "Someone's stealing classified intelligence files," Daniel whispered, "using weapons shipments as cover." Another explosion rocked the building as federal teams breached the east wall. Through the chaos, James spotted Drake heading for a secure exit protected by his remaining operators. "Choose now," he told Daniel. "Help me stop Drake, you get full immunity. Everything you did here gets classified as a sanctioned operation." Daniel checked his weapon, then nodded. "What's the play?" "First, we need to reach those drives before they trigger the thermite. Then," James smiled, the expression sending chills down Daniel's spine, "then we show Drake why they called my father the Ghost Blade." Below, Drake's men had finished placing charges. Soon they would destroy evidence of one of the largest intelligence thefts in history. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd given the Ghost Blade's son exactly what he needed. Proof of an international conspiracy, proof of Drake's true operation, and a chance to finish what started in Osaka. James and Daniel moved along the storage room's upper walkway with practiced efficiency, using the federal breach points as cover. Below, Drake's men were starting to trigger the thermite charges, preparing to destroy the intelligence drives. "We've got 3 minutes once those charges start," James said, checking angles. "After that, the thermite burns hot enough to melt through the drive casings." "Sir!" one of Drake's operators called out. "Federal teams have breached the East Corridor. Master Chen is leading personally." Drake's composed facade cracked. "Trigger all charges. Nothing can fall into federal hands." He turned to his security chief. "Prepare the backup protocol, like Osaka." James's eyes narrowed. "Osaka." That's the connection I missed. He keyed his hidden communicator. "Master Chen, are you receiving?" "Go ahead, Ghost." Chen's voice was steady, despite the gunfire in the background. "Drake's running the same operation as Osaka. Remember, that military data center that got hit, the one where classified files disappeared right before a thermite accident." Through the chaos, James could hear Chen cursing. "Son of a—" "He's not stealing random intelligence. He's building a complete database of black operations, assets, locations, protocols. Enough to compromise every intelligence agency in the region," James confirmed. "Nuclear components were just cover. Nobody looks too closely at nuclear shipments. Too much paperwork, too many agencies involved." Daniel checked his ammunition. "How do we stop them?" "The charges are sequenced," James explained, moving into position. "They have to trigger in order or the fail-safes kick in. Standard military protocol." He smiled grimly. "The same protocol I helped design." Below, Drake's men had started the sequence. The first thermite charge ignited with a brilliant flash, starting the countdown to total drive destruction. "Now!" James's command sent Daniel into motion. They dropped from the walkway onto storage containers, using Drake's own tactical positioning against him. His men had created perfect cover positions for anyone attacking from ground level. They weren't prepared for threats from above. James moved like his father's nickname, a ghost flowing between cover points. 2 of Drake's operators went down before they realized the attack was coming from an unexpected angle. Daniel proved his ranger training, providing precise covering fire that forced the remaining security team to retreat. The drives! Drake's voice carried real panic now. Protect those drives! But James had reached the first row of containers, his hands moving with practiced speed, disarming the thermite sequence he'd helped develop. Daniel kept Drake's men pinned down, while federal breach teams advanced from multiple directions. "It's over, Marcus," James called out, his voice carrying that quiet authority. "Your entire operation is exposed, Osaka. Every data theft, all of it. You don't understand what you're dealing with." Drake's composure was gone. "This goes higher than you can imagine. Governments, intelligence agencies, people who can make anyone disappear." "You mean like you made those data analysts disappear in Osaka?" James moved to the next set of charges. Or those cybersecurity experts who went missing after questioning certain accidents. More federal teams breached the dojo. Master Chen's voice boomed through tactical speakers. "All units secure those drives. Priority Alpha." Drake's remaining operators started to fall back, professionals recognizing a lost cause, but Drake himself seemed to snap. He charged toward the drives, pulling something from his jacket. "If I can't have the files," he snarled, "nobody can." James recognized the device, a dead man's switch linked to emergency charges. He moved without hesitation, trusting Daniel to cover his flank. His first strike caught Drake's arm, sending the switch flying. The second hit his tactical vest, driving him back. But Drake wasn't finished. He drew his sword with his offhand, attacking with desperate fury. "You have no idea what you're stopping. The power in those files, the secrets, that's your problem, Marcus." James's voice was almost gentle as he closed the distance. "You see secrets as power. I see them as responsibility." The final confrontation happened almost too fast to follow. Drake, despite his expensive suit and diplomatic credentials, proved he remembered his special forces training. He and James moved in a lethal dance of close-quarter combat, each looking for the decisive advantage. But there was a reason they called his father the Ghost Blade. Drake never saw the final strike coming. One moment he was pressing his attack. The next he was disarmed and on his knees, James's blade pressed against his throat. "Osaka," James said softly. "Every data theft, every accident, every analyst who disappeared. Talk fast, Marcus, before I decide you're too dangerous to take alive." Around them, federal teams secured the dojo. The remaining Shadow Riders surrendered while tactical contractors threw down their weapons. Daniel kept guard as Master Chen approached, his tactical team scanning for remaining threats. "The drives are secure," Chen reported. "Looks like we got to them in time." "The classified files are intact." James kept his blade on Drake. "Almost too easy, wasn't it? Almost like someone wanted us to recover these specific drives." Drake's laughter held no humor. "Finally figured it out, didn't you? You're right. These drives were bait. The real files, the real operation." He smiled coldly. "You've got no idea what's coming." James met Chen's eyes. They both recognized the implications. This wasn't just about stolen intelligence anymore. Someone had used Drake's operation to distract from something bigger, something worth sacrificing an entire data theft ring to hide. The Thompson Dojo had become a federal crime scene, technical teams swarming the drive containers while tactical units secured the perimeter. But James's mind was already processing patterns he might have missed. The drives were a distraction, he told Chen as they reviewed preliminary data. Drake wanted us focused on the intelligence theft, while something bigger moved into position. Makes sense. Chen pulled up satellite imagery on his tactical tablet. We've got increased activity at 3 other sites along the trade route, all showing the same weapons-grade signature we tracked here. Daniel, now officially working with the federal team, studied the images. Those are the properties the Shadow Riders were forcing people to sell. They needed the whole route. James nodded. Not for moving data drives, for moving something else. Something worth burning an entire intelligence operation to hide. Drake sat handcuffed nearby, his expensive suit now dirty and torn, but his earlier panic had been replaced by an unsettling calm. "You still don't see it, do you?" He smiled at James. "All these years chasing shadows, you never asked who really shut down your father's Osaka investigation. Who had that kind of authority?" "Assistant Director Phillips," James replied. "He claimed national security concerns." "Phillips was a messenger," Drake laughed softly. "Just like I'm a messenger, there are larger forces at work, Ghost. Forces that make your federal badge look like a child's toy." A commotion at the perimeter drew their attention. A black SUV with diplomatic plates had arrived, accompanied by 2 more vehicles with government markers. "Right on time," Drake murmured. James watched a man in an expensive suit emerge from the SUV, flanked by security. He moved with the confident stride of someone used to absolute authority. James recognized him immediately. "William Crawford," he said softly, "Deputy Director of National Security." "Well," Chen cursed under his breath, "this just got interesting." Crawford's security team spread out professionally as he reached the command post. His smile was practiced, political. "Mr. Blackwood, quite a situation you've uncovered here. Unfortunately, this operation now falls under national security oversight. We'll take it from here." James studied him carefully. "Will you? Like you took over Osaka?" Crawford's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "Careful, son. Some questions are above your pay grade. Like why the Deputy Director of National Security is personally interested in a local weapons smuggling operation." James kept his voice neutral. "Or why weapons-grade signatures are showing up at multiple sites along the trade route." "This is now a classified operation," Crawford replied. "All evidence and prisoners will be transferred to federal custody, including Mr. Drake." Drake's earlier calm made sense now. He'd been waiting for this. "Those weapons-grade signatures," Daniel spoke up, his voice carrying military precision. "They're moving, 3 convoys, all heading north toward the border." Crawford's security team subtly shifted positions, hands moving closer to weapons. The tension in the command post ratcheted up. "Stand down," Crawford ordered. "That's a direct command from the Office of National Security." James smiled. The expression sent chills through the room. "Here's the problem, Director. I've spent 10 years tracking this operation, watching patterns, connecting dots." He moved with deliberate calm, making Crawford's security team nervous. "And now I know why Osaka was shut down, why every investigation was buried. Because someone high up in intelligence services is running their own operation, moving something so classified it's worth killing to protect." "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Crawford's political mask cracked slightly. The bigger picture is that loyal agents are dying," James cut him off. "Disappeared, eliminated, buried in accidents when they get too close, just like you planned for my father in Osaka." Crawford's hand moved toward his jacket. "That's enough. Security, take them into custody, all of them." But James had been waiting for this. His phone broadcast a pre-recorded message to every federal frequency. "Attention all units. Be advised, Operation Shadow Strike is now active. Authorization. Code Ghost Legacy Delta." Through the dojo windows, they could see tactical teams moving into new positions. Not Crawford's security, but James's people. The ones he'd spent 10 years placing carefully. "It's called having a longer game, Director," he said softly. "While you were watching for ghosts, I was building an army." Crawford's face showed real fear now. "You can't. This operation is vital to national security. The material being moved is—" "What exactly?" James's voice carried absolute authority. "Because in about 30 seconds, every federal agency in 3 states will be moving on those convoys. So talk fast, Director." What are you really moving through my territory? Crawford's security team maintained their positions, but James could see the uncertainty in their stance. Professional operators recognized when a situation had shifted beyond their control. Those convoys, James kept his voice calm while reviewing tactical feeds. They're not just heading for the border. They're converging on specific coordinates. Care to explain why the Deputy Director of National Security is coordinating with foreign buyers on American soil? You have no authority, Crawford started, but James cut him off. 3 teams of federal tactical units moving to intercept, he announced, letting him see the live feeds, satellite coverage showing your convoy routes, and most importantly, he smiled coldly, complete records of every operation you've buried. Osaka, every data theft, all of it. Daniel approached with new data on his tablet. Sir, thermal imaging from the convoy loads not matching any known weapons-grade profile. Because it's not nuclear material, James said, watching Crawford's reaction. That was just cover for what you're really moving, something worth compromising national security for. Crawford's political mask cracked further. You don't understand. These materials, they're beyond classified, beyond any normal protocol. Sir, one of his security team reported urgently, federal units have blocked all access routes to Highway 17. The convoys are being boxed in. James's phone buzzed, Master Chen coordinating the intercept teams. Talk fast, Director, he advised as he watched panic spread across Crawford's face. Because in about 5 minutes those convoys hit our roadblocks. Then everyone sees what you're really transporting. You can't stop this, Crawford's voice held desperate authority. These shipments are vital to national security, to relationships with our allies. Allies? James stepped closer, making his security team tense. Like the buyers in Osaka, the ones who disappeared our intelligence analysts after getting what they wanted. Daniel checked another tactical feed. Sir, Convoy 2 is attempting to divert onto county roads, local units moving to intercept. Crawford grabbed for his phone, but James was faster. Let me guess, calling to authorize lethal force? Just like Osaka. He held up his own phone, showing the signal jammer. No more buried operations, Director. No more disappeared agents. You don't have the authority, Crawford began, but James's laugh cut him off. I have something better than authority, he said softly. I have proof. Proof of every operation you've compromised, every agent you've sacrificed, every deal you've made with foreign intelligence services. He nodded to Daniel, who displayed his tablet showing Crawford's surveillance photos, financial records, communication logs, 10 years of carefully gathered evidence. You've been playing chess, James explained. I've been playing a longer game. Every site you've used, every route you've established, every contact you've made, I've been watching, waiting, building the case that would expose everything. Crawford's security team looked increasingly uncertain. These were professional, operators, trained to protect government officials, but they weren't trained for this, for discovering their boss was compromising national security. Sir, the team leader said carefully, we need to know. Are these shipments authorized by the Intelligence Committee? Stand down, Crawford ordered, but his voice shook slightly. James pressed his advantage. Tell them, Director. Tell them about the real buyers, the ones who've been purchasing classified intelligence, acquiring restricted materials, eliminating witnesses. Sir, Daniel called urgently, Convoy 3 is stopped. They're security teams. They're surrendering to federal units. Crawford moved with desperate speed, drawing a concealed weapon, but James had been waiting for this too. He countered with practiced efficiency, disarming him before his own security could react. That's the problem with corrupt officials, he said as Crawford went to his knees, clutching his injured hand. They always think they're the smartest ones in the room, always think they're untouchable. His phone buzzed again, Chen updating. All convoys contained. You need to see what they're carrying. This goes deeper than we thought." James kept Crawford covered, while his security team, now fully aware of the situation, secured him properly. "Now," he said softly, letting him see the ghost that had haunted fighters' nightmares, "let's talk about what you're really moving through my territory and who you're really working for." The game had changed. The real operation was about to be exposed, and Crawford was about to learn why they called his father the Ghost Blade. Because once he started hunting, nowhere was safe to hide. The first images from the intercepted convoys made even James pause. The trucks hadn't been carrying weapons or nuclear materials. The cargo was something far more dangerous. Cutting-edge military prototype weapons, next-generation combat systems, and experimental technology that wasn't supposed to exist. "Advanced weapons platforms," Daniel reported, reviewing the manifest. "Prototype combat AI systems, quantum targeting algorithms, everything needed to build a next-generation warfare infrastructure." Crawford, now securely restrained, laughed bitterly. "You have no idea what you've done. The deals in place, the arrangements with foreign intelligence services. You mean like these?" James displayed intercepted communications on the command post screens. "Arrangements with rogue intelligence agencies, sales of classified military technology, transfer of restricted research to foreign powers, all authorized under Crawford's security clearance." Master Chen's voice crackled through the tactical comms. "Ghost, you need to see this. Convoy 3 was carrying personnel files, lists of covert operatives, safe house locations, active operation details." James studied Crawford's reaction. He wasn't just selling technology, he realized, watching the deputy director's expression. He was selling out our entire defense network, every agent, every operation, every security protocol. "You think too small," Crawford sneered. "This is bigger than intelligence, bigger than national security. This is about the future of military power." Daniel approached with new data. "Sir, we're tracking multiple unauthorized satellite uplinks. Someone's activated emergency protocols at the other trade route sites." James smiled coldly. "Your buyers getting nervous, Director? Realizing their investment is about to be exposed?" "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Crawford's voice held real fear now. "These people, they don't just eliminate witnesses, they erase entire operations, make whole agencies disappear. Like they tried to do in Osaka?" James moved closer, letting him see the predator behind his calm exterior. "Tell me, Director, who really ordered my father's investigation shut down? Who has enough authority to bury evidence of international technology theft?" Before Crawford could respond, Daniel called out urgently, "Multiple vehicles approaching from the north. Diplomatic plates, but the thermal signatures. They're carrying military-grade equipment." "Your real masters arriving?" James asked. "Crawford. The ones who've been buying America's military secrets?" Crawford's face went pale. "You don't understand. They'll kill everyone, clean the whole operation, just like Osaka." "No," James's voice carried absolute certainty. "They won't." He keyed his tactical comms. "All units, this is Ghost. Execute Operation Legacy Protocol." Around the dojo's perimeter, hidden federal teams emerged from concealed positions, but these weren't regular tactical units. These were specialized operators, the ones James had spent years recruiting and positioning. "You see, Director," he explained calmly, "while you were selling out our defense network, I was building my own. Every agent you threatened, every operator you tried to silence, I gave them a new purpose, a way to fight back." Daniel checked the tactical feeds. "Foreign teams entering our containment zone. 8 vehicles, multiple armed operators." "Let them come," James said softly. "Let them see what happens when they push American operatives." "Too far." when they try to buy and sell our people like commodities. Crawford struggled against his restraints. You don't have the authority. These are foreign intelligence services, diplomatic immunity. Diplomatic immunity doesn't cover treason, James cut him off. Doesn't protect people who sell out their own country. He turned to the tactical screens. And it definitely doesn't shield foreign agents conducting hostile operations on American soil. Through the command post windows, they could see the foreign teams taking positions. Professional operators used to working with impunity under diplomatic cover, but they weren't prepared for what awaited them. James, Daniel called out, checking. Tactical feeds. They're receiving new data marks. Something's got them spooked. That would be the files I just transmitted to every major intelligence agency in the world, James explained. Proof of your operation, their involvement, everything. No more shadows to hide in. Crawford's face showed real fear now. You've just started a war. No, James corrected. I've just finished one. The war you've been waging against your own agents, your own defense services. He smiled coldly. Welcome to the Ghost's hunting ground, Director. Time to face judgment. The real endgame was about to begin. The foreign team's heavily tinted windows finally opened, revealing the true architects of the conspiracy. 3 figures emerged. Not the military operators or intelligence agents James's team had been containing, but elegant men in expensive suits. People used to wielding power from comfortable offices, not tactical situations. Generals Petrov, Chen, and Reznikov, James identified them through the command post window. The ones who really control international weapons development. The ones who ordered Osaka buried. Daniel checked his tactical feeds. Sir, we're getting responses from intelligence agencies worldwide. Your evidence dump is causing chaos in every major capital. Of course it is, James smiled coldly. 10 years of classified operations suddenly exposed. Every corrupt official, every compromised agent, every illegal weapons deal, all public now. Crawford watched the 3 generals approach with growing dread. They'll kill everyone, burn everything. They can't afford witnesses. That's your mistake, Director. James cut him off. Still thinking like they do. Still believing in their shadows. He keyed his tactical comms. All units, prepare to receive command leadership. The 3 generals walked with careful precision through the contained foreign operators, their expensive shoes incongruous on the dojo's concrete floor. Petrov, their apparent leader, maintained his diplomatic facade. Mr. Blackwood, he greeted smoothly. I must protest this unprecedented breach of diplomatic protocol. Save it, James interrupted. Your diplomatic cover is blown. Right now, every intelligence agency in the world is reviewing proof of your existence. The Shadow Council isn't a whispered rumor anymore. Chen stepped forward, his cultured voice carrying subtle threat. You have no idea what you've done. The careful balance we maintain. You mean the balance of power you've stolen? James's voice could have frozen flame, using people like Crawford to compromise defense networks, eliminating agents who get too close. We maintain order, Reznikov insisted. Control the flow of military technology, prevent destructive conflicts by selling classified weapons to the highest bidder. Daniel displayed intercepts on the tactical screen by trading military secrets between nations. Petrov's diplomatic mask cracked slightly. Mr. Blackwood, surely we can discuss this reasonably. Your evidence, while concerning, could be explained like you explained Osaka. James moved with predatory grace, making the generals step back. Like El Paso? Through the command post windows, they could see more federal units arriving. Not regular tactical teams, but specialized units responding to James's evidence release. The kind of operators who handled major international incidents. It's over, James told the generals. Your network is exposed. Your corrupt officials are being arrested worldwide. Your carefully constructed shadow empire is falling apart in real time. You don't understand what you're unleashing. Petrov's voice held real fear now. The chaos, when these secrets emerge. I understand perfectly. James's smile was terrifying in its calm. I understand you've spent decades manipulating defense networks, compromising agents, eliminating anyone who threatened your power. Now those same agents are coming for you. Daniel monitored global communications. Sir, we're getting confirmation. Intelligence agencies worldwide are moving on council facilities. Arrests being made at highest levels. Impossible, Cheney whispered. Our security protocols were compromised the moment you tried to eliminate my father in Osaka, James explained. You see, that's the problem with people who think they're untouchable. They never look for ghosts in their own shadows. The council members' composure finally shattered as they realized the true scope of their situation. James hadn't just exposed their operation. He'd systematically dismantled their entire power structure. Your choice is simple, he told them quietly. Surrender now. Provide evidence against your entire network, and maybe you survive what's coming. Or, he shrugged, find out why they called my father the Ghost Blade. Petrov made a desperate gesture to his contained operators. Maximum force. Eliminate everyone. But the foreign teams didn't move. They'd seen James's evidence, understood what the council really was. Professional operators faced with proof. They'd been working for criminals who manipulated defense services for profit. They won't help you, James said softly. No one will. Welcome to judgment, gentlemen. The ghosts you created are coming home to haunt you. The Shadow Council's reign was ending. James watched from the command post as more specialized teams arrived, operators from intelligence agencies worldwide converging on the dojo. Each carried personal motivation, colleagues lost to council, accidents, careers destroyed by their manipulation, lives shattered by their corruption. Sarah Chen emerged from the lead tactical unit, her business attire replaced by federal gear. The shop owner's facade had fallen away, revealing the covert operator she'd always been. Ghost, she greeted James. Tran facility is secure. Found. Everything. The cleanup operations, the eliminated agents, the technology sales. Send copies to every agency, James ordered. Let them all see how deep the corruption went, how many of their people were sacrificed for council profits. Through the morning mist, more tactical vehicles arrived. Each international team prepared to transport their prisoners, their evidence, their piece of the dismantled Shadow Empire. Master Chen coordinated the response, his usual calm demeanor hardened by years of waiting for this moment. Sir, Daniel called out, monitoring global communications. We're getting updates from multiple agencies, council sleeper agents being arrested, hidden accounts frozen, black operations exposed. The dominoes are falling, Chen observed, watching the council members' composure disintegrate as decades of careful manipulation collapsed around them. Every corrupt official, every compromised agent, every hidden operation, all of it coming to light. James watched Petrov being transferred to CIA custody. The general's diplomatic facade crumbled completely, replaced by the fear of someone facing real consequences. You know what happens next, James told him quietly. Every agency you manipulated, every service you corrupted, they all want answers about their lost agents, their compromised operations, their betrayed trust. You've destroyed everything, Petrov protested weakly. Decades of careful balance. The balance you maintained through murder, Sarah's voice carried controlled fury, through betrayal, through sacrificing loyal agents for profit. Around them, the international teams continued their precise work, each operator carrying personal motivation. Colleagues lost to council cleanup operations, careers destroyed by their manipulation, lives shattered by their corruption. "Marshal," Daniel reported, checking tactical feeds. "More council facilities being secured worldwide, intelligence services coordinating response on every continent." James nodded, watching Chen being prepared for transport to a European intelligence service. Send everything to the International Task Force, every piece of evidence, every exposed connection, every revealed operation. "The ripples are still spreading," Master Chen noted. "This goes deeper than anyone imagined. Military contracts, political influence, international security protocols." "They didn't just corrupt intelligence services," James explained. "They corrupted the entire system, used their shadows to manipulate global security for profit. Through secure channels, they could hear the coordinated response continuing worldwide. Decades of careful manipulation crumbling as evidence exposed the true scope of council operations." "Sir," Daniel called out, monitoring communications, "we're getting requests from multiple agencies. They all want to debrief you, understand how you expose the council's network." "Tell them the truth." James smiled coldly. "Tell them about shadows, about hunters who learned to wait, about ghosts who never forgot." Sarah checked her tactical gear, preparing to escort her prisoners. 10 years, Ghost. 10 years you hunted them, built your network, prepared for this moment. They gave me time." James watched Reznikov's transport prepare to depart. "After Osaka, after they tried to eliminate my father, they thought he was finished, just another loose end tied up. Instead, you became something else," Daniel understood. "Something that hunted them from inside their own shadows." The morning sun climbed higher as the international teams finished their preparations. Each agency had its own prisoners to transport, its own evidence to process, its own justice to pursue. "The Council's reign is over," Master Chen announced, watching the vehicles depart. Their shadow empire exposed, their manipulation revealed, their power broken. James nodded, but his expression remained watchful. "The immediate threat is contained, but the ripples will continue. More corruption will be exposed, more conspiracies revealed, more shadows burned away." "And the ghost?" Sarah asked quietly. "What happens to the hunter when the prey is caught?" "There are always more shadows," James replied. "Always more corruption to expose, always more justice to pursue." Daniel monitored the departing transports on tactical feeds. Each prisoner headed to a different jurisdiction. Each agency gets their chance at justice. James watched the vehicles disappear into the morning light. Let them face accountability in every nation they corrupted. Let them answer for every agent they sacrificed, every operation they compromised, every life they destroyed. The dojo that had seen the council's final fall now stood quiet in the Texas morning, but its impact would echo through intelligence services worldwide as decades of corruption finally faced the light of justice. "Sir," Daniel reported one final update. "All council prisoners secure, all evidence transmitted, all agencies coordinating response." James nodded, watching the last transport vanish into the distance. "The ghost's hunt is finished, but the work continues. There are always more shadows to burn away, always more justice to pursue." The morning sun painted the hills gold as the international teams departed, each carrying a piece of the dismantled shadow empire, each pursuing their own justice for years of corruption and betrayal. The ghost's mission was complete, but its impact would continue, echoing through defense services worldwide as decades of manipulation finally faced the consequences of their actions. "Time to go home," James told his team. "Back to the ranch, back to the quiet life." But they all knew the truth. For people like them, survivors, hunters, ghosts, the work was never really finished. There would always be more shadows to burn away, always more justice to pursue. The ghost might return to its ranch, but it would always be watching, always ready to hunt again if darkness threatened to rise. The dojo erupted in chaos as Petrov made his final, desperate move. Despite being in custody, the council leader had one last card to play. He triggered a hidden device in his watch, and suddenly, emergency protocols activated across all communication channels. "Sir!" Daniel called urgently. "Multiple systems going dark. Some kind of coordinated cyber attack." "Their dead hand protocol," James explained calmly, watching security systems crash around them. "The Council's ultimate failsafe, designed to create enough chaos to cover their escape." Through the dojo windows, they could see the effects spreading. Security cameras failed, communication networks crashed. Even the federal tactical team's encrypted channels went silent. "You should have taken the deal," Petrov sneered, his composed facade returning. "Now everything burns, just like Osaka." But James smiled, the expression sending chills through the room. "You really should have checked who designed your emergency protocols. After Osaka, we knew you'd try something like this." Daniel worked his console with practiced efficiency. "Backup systems engaging, sir. Everything exactly where you said it would be." The council members watched in growing horror as their failsafe turned against them. Instead of crashing systems, their protocol was now exposing hidden networks, revealing secret communications, laying bare decades of carefully concealed operations. 10 years, James explained quietly. 10 years studying your patterns, your protocols, your failsafes. Did you really think we wouldn't be ready for this? Chen lunged for Daniel's console, but the young operator moved with military precision. The council member found himself face down, professionally restrained before he could reach the equipment. "Ranger training, sir," Daniel explained professionally, "plus some extra lessons from the ghost." Through the tactical feeds that remained active, they could see the global impact of the Council's desperate gambit, but instead of creating covering chaos, their dead hand protocol was exposing everything. Master Chen's voice crackled through a secured channel. "Council facilities worldwide are going dark, but our embedded systems are tracking everything. Their entire shadow network is lighting up." James nodded to Daniel. "Show them." The tactical screens displayed a cascade of data. Hidden council operations being exposed, secret facilities revealed, decades of carefully concealed communications suddenly laid bare. "You see," James told the devastated council members, "we didn't just study your protocols, we rebuilt them. Every failsafe, every emergency system, every last-ditch option, we turned them all into backdoors." Reznikov struggled against his restraints. "Impossible. Our systems are quantum encrypted by the same technology you were stealing." James's smile was predatory. "The technology we've been studying for 10 years. Amazing what you can learn when you know where to look." Petrov's composure finally shattered completely. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The chaos this will cause. Defense networks worldwide will be compromised." "No," James corrected coldly. "Defense networks worldwide will be cleaned, every corrupt official exposed, every compromised operation revealed, every criminal conspiracy laid bare." Daniel monitored the expanding cascade of revelations. "Sir, we're getting reports from multiple agencies. Council sleeper agents being identified, hidden accounts exposed, black operations revealed." "The shadows are burning away," James told the council leaders. "Everything you built, everything you manipulated, everything you killed to protect, all of it exposed to the light." Through the dojo windows, they could see federal tactical teams securing the perimeter. But these weren't regular units anymore. These were specialized operators responding to international protocols, preparing to take custody of the architects of a global conspiracy. Your choice now is simple, James explained to the defeated council members. Cooperate fully. Tell us everything about your operations, your networks, your hidden protocols. Or, he shrugged, face justice in every jurisdiction you've corrupted. I hear some of those countries still have very medieval approaches to treason. Petrov made one last attempt at authority. You don't have the right. We maintained order, controlled the flow of technology, prevented what? James's voice could have frozen flame. Prevented justice? Prevented accountability? Prevented the truth about your crimes from coming to light? Daniel reported more incoming data. Sir, intelligence agencies worldwide are coordinating response. They're moving to secure exposed council facilities, arrest identified operatives. You've destroyed decades of careful balance, Chen protested weakly. The chaos when these secrets emerge, the balance you maintain through murder, James cut him off, through betrayal, through sacrificing loyal agents for profit. Through her tactical comms, Sarah reported, Ghost, we've got confirmation. Council leadership worldwide is being taken into custody. Their network is exposed. You've doomed us all, Petrov snarled, desperation replacing his diplomatic tone. The secrets we contain, the operations we control, releasing them will destroy the balance of power. The balance you manufactured, James's voice carried deadly calm. The one you maintained by selling military secrets, compromising agents, eliminating anyone who threatened your control. Daniel monitored global communications. Sir, intelligence agencies worldwide are coordinating response. They're shutting down council operations, securing compromised facilities. Your choice is simple, James told the council leaders. Surrender now. Provide evidence against your entire network. Face justice in multiple jurisdictions. Or, he smiled coldly, well, I hear some of your former assets are very interested in having private conversations about past operations. The council members' faces showed real fear now. They knew exactly what happened to exposed manipulators in the intelligence world, how quickly loyalty turned to vengeance when decades of corruption were revealed. The Ghost's hunt is almost over, James announced, watching international units approach the dojo. The only question is whether you face justice through official channels or he let the threat hang in the air. The Shadow Empire was falling, and its architects were about to discover why some predators should never be provoked. The International Task Force arrived with precision that impressed even James, representatives from a dozen intelligence agencies, each with personal reasons to want the Council brought to justice, each with scores to settle for murdered agents and compromised operations. Quite a reunion, James observed, as familiar faces emerged from tactical vehicles. Survivors from various council operations, operators who'd escaped their cleanup teams, agents who'd gone underground rather than be silenced. Daniel monitored the approaching teams. Sir, I'm counting operators from CIA, MI6, DGSE, multiple agencies coordinating custody protocols. Of course. James smiled coldly at the council members. You didn't just corrupt American defense networks. You manipulated every major service. Now they all want their pound of flesh. Petrov watched the approaching operators with growing dread. You don't understand what you're unleashing. The secrets we protected, the balance we maintained. You mean the secrets you sold, James cut him off. The balance you maintained through murder. Amazing how quickly loyalty disappears when the shadows are stripped away, when people see exactly who they've been serving. Sarah coordinated with the arriving teams. Each prisoner headed to a different jurisdiction, each agency getting their chance at justice. As it should be, James thought, watching the council members wrestle with their collapsing reality. We can still contain this. Chen made one last desperate attempt at negotiation. Make arrangements. Your evidence disappears. Your people get protection. Like the protection you offered in Osaka? James's voice could have frozen flame. The same protection that got agents killed, that buried evidence of your crimes. The international teams entered with coordinated precision. James recognized many of the operators, survivors like him who'd faced council cleanup teams and lived to fight back. Sarah, he greeted the MI6 team leader. Still have that scar from Tran? Among others, Sarah replied, her British accent carrying cold authority. Been waiting a long time for this ghost. The council members watched their worst nightmare unfold as operators from multiple agencies approached. Men and women they'd tried to eliminate now returned with official sanction and righteous purpose. Your choice is simple, James told them. Cooperate fully with every agency here. Reveal everything about your operations and maybe you face justice in civilized jurisdictions. He nodded to the assembled operators. Resist. Well, I hear some countries still have very medieval approaches to dealing with traitors. Daniel monitored the expanding global response. Sir, we're getting reports worldwide. Council facilities being secured, sleeper agents arrested, hidden accounts frozen. The shadows are burning away. You've destroyed everything, Reznikov protested weakly. The careful balance of power. The balance you maintained through corruption. Sarah's voice carried years of controlled anger. Through betrayal, through sacrificing loyal agents for profit. James watched the international teams prepare to take custody, each agency having its own charges to file, its own justice to pursue. The council leaders would face accountability in multiple jurisdictions. Sir, Daniel called out, checking tactical feeds, more council facilities going dark worldwide, but our embedded systems are tracking everything. Their entire shadow network is exposed. Show them, James ordered. The tactical screens displayed the cascade of revelations, hidden operations exposed, secret facilities revealed, decades of carefully concealed communications laid bare for every intelligence service to examine. You see, James told the council members, we didn't just study your networks, we rebuilt them. Every failsafe, every protocol, every emergency system, we turned them all into back doors. Udi Petrov's face showed pure hatred now. You have no idea what you've done, the chaos when these secrets emerge. Actually, I do, James smiled coldly. I understand exactly what happens when decades of corruption are exposed. When compromised, agents realize they've been manipulated. When professional operators discover they've been working for criminals. The international teams moved with practiced efficiency, securing the council members for transport. Each operator carried personal motivation, colleagues lost to council cleanup operations, careers destroyed by their manipulation, lives shattered by their corruption. The ghost's hunt is ending, James announced, watching justice approach. But your trials are just beginning. Every agency here has charges to file. Every service has scores to settle. Through the dojo windows, they could see more tactical teams arriving. The building had become a focal point of international accountability, where decades of shadow manipulation finally faced the light, Daniel reported, monitoring global communications. Intelligence services worldwide are coordinating response. Hidden council operations being exposed on every continent, James nodded, watching the architects of so much corruption face real consequences. Prepare them for transport. Each agency gets their chance at justice. Each service gets answers about their lost operators. The council members' carefully constructed world was collapsing completely, their shadow empire exposed, their manipulation revealed, their power stripped away by the very type of operator they'd tried to eliminate. Your mission is reaching its end, Sarah observed, watching the international teams prepare for transport. "What happens to the ghost now?" "The immediate threat is contained," James replied, "but the ripples will continue. More corruption will be exposed, more conspiracies revealed, more shadows burned away. The ghost's legacy lives on in every operator who refuses to let darkness rule." As the council members were led away to face justice in multiple jurisdictions, James watched the morning sun paint the Texas hills gold. The Shadow Empire had fallen, but its impact would echo through intelligence services worldwide as decades of corruption finally faced the light of justice. The Ghost's hunt was complete, but the impact would continue, reminding those who'd hide in shadows that justice eventually finds its way into light, that truth eventually burns away all darkness, that some shadows hide hunters, not just prey. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.